ग्लोबल स्किल डेवलपमेंट मिशन में आपका स्वागत है।
All right, next, and this is my favorite part of the entire design process, and it really is, in my mind, the foundation of a successful design, a successful layout, whether it's a brochure, a website, some signage, whatever it might be, determining the message of the design. What is the purpose of the design? What is it exactly that you want the design to communicate? Now, we really don't want to fly blind. We want to have a really concrete idea of exactly what it is that we're going to build and why we are building it. And, oftentimes what I'll do is I'll rough out my designs on a scrap piece of paper. In my mind, the greatest invention of mankind, aside from the printing press and the internet, is scrap pieces of paper and pencils, because you can get so many ideas down on paper ahead of time. It's not about sitting down at the computer and hacking away until you finally get a design that works. We really want to be intelligent about our designs. We want to be making logical decisions that have purpose. And again, for me, that all happens on scrap paper. So what we want to do is we want to start to get an idea of what it is exactly that we want to communicate. Don't forget that design is the intentional use of typography, a set of colors, and visual elements that reinforces what it is that your design is communicating. And I gotta underline the word intentional. We're not just using a certain font just because. We're not using a particular set of colors just because. Every single choice that we make has to have a purpose and an intentional choice behind it. Okay? Now, what I like to suggest is to start with the feeling that you want the design to communicate, okay? So, for instance, I have some examples here for you. Think of the Apple brand. When I think of Apple, I think very high-tech, I think very simple and easy to use, and also very clean. When I think of Starbucks, the coffee chain, I think high quality, I think elegance. When I think of Amazon.com, I think fast service, easy, friendly, supportive, things like that. Are there any others that you can think of on your own? Think of the feelings that some of the brands that you like, in particular, create inside of you, or think of the feelings that certain designs and layouts that you see on a daily basis create emotionally for yourself and for others, okay? Once you know what it is that you want to communicate, then what we can do is we can actually get to work. We can start gathering the colors, the typography, and the visual elements that are all going to support the design's message. Next, I would want to encourage you to ask your client or your boss or whoever you're building the design for what's most important about the project, what sorts of feelings they want to evoke, and what is the overall purpose of the design. As a matter of fact, I have a series of questions here for you that you can ask your client or your boss, or perhaps you're building the design for yourself. You can ask yourself these questions. So here we go. You may want to get your notepads ready. First of all, what is the purpose of your design project? Is the purpose to generate sales? Is the purpose to create sales leads? Is it a simple brand awareness piece? Do you want the viewer to take some kind of action? And if so, what action do you want them to take? And so on. Okay? Next, describe how you envision the project once it's complete. So in other words, what does it look like? What emotions does it convey? How does it make the viewer feel about the design piece? Can you provide some examples of layouts and designs that you like, that you find appealing? So you want to ask them for samples of things that they already like that are in line with the current project. Okay? All right. Next, what are the most important aspects of the design? And this really is related to the first question, what is the purpose of your project? But as you can see, these are really sort of probing questions that really get down to the nitty-gritty. And sometimes, by the way, and I'm going to pause the question and answer period here for a second, sometimes you really have to push your boss or your client or even yourself. Oftentimes they'll say, I just want the design to pop. I just want to give it a little bit of flair. Well, what does that mean? I want it to look high tech. And you can say, well, you can either look really good or you can generate sales. You can either look really great or you can create sales leads, something like this. And I think this is something that I had touched on earlier on, so forgive me if I've already mentioned that, but that's really what it boils down to, is sometimes you have to push them a little bit. Okay, next question. This is huge. Who's your target audience? We want to know who this design is for, and perhaps once we know who the target audience is, perhaps it's senior citizens, perhaps it's a special needs group, who knows. Maybe what we could do then is we could go and find designs and layouts that are already being targeted for that particular audience, and we could emulate some of those designs or get some ideas based off of those designs that we can incorporate into the current project. Okay? All right. Next, what is it that you want the design to say? What is it that you want it to communicate? I think we've talked about that quite a bit already, but essentially it boils down to what sort of message is it that you want to express or convey. Don't forget, this is visual communications, okay? All right, what sorts of emotions do you want your design to convey? I've mentioned that once or twice already. I don't think we need to run over that one. Again, let's see. Oh, here's one. Do you have an existing brand? Does your company, does your business already have an existing set of fonts and colors and possibly imagery that they're using to create their brand? And if so, perhaps we can apply some of what's already been established for the company, for the business, into this new design project. Okay? And then last but not least, for web projects, and I suppose this would apply for other sorts of projects as well, but I'm going to use the example of a web project. What sorts of pages do you want in the website? So this is really more of a structural question, but it's important to ask if you are going to be getting into web design. So for instance, you would ask your client, okay, what pages do you want on your website? Do you want an About Us page? You would likely want a Contact Us page. What about things like company history? What about the product catalog? If you're building an online catalog or an online store for a customer, then we've got to figure out how we're going to sort and organize all of the products inside their catalog and organize them under different headings, this kind of thing. And again, this is something that I usually figure out on a scrap piece of paper, figuring out the structure for the website. Okay? But in any regard, the answers to all of these questions help us determine the fonts, the colors, and the imagery that we're going to wind up using inside the design. And once we have a grasp on the design's message, the feeling that the design should evoke, the purpose of the design, and so on, then we're going to start selecting fonts and colors and imagery that support the design's message. And you know, just like words, just like the spoken or the written word, fonts or typefaces really, colors and images speak and communicate to the viewer. We've all heard the expression that a picture is worth 1,000 words because imagery communicates, colors communicate, typefaces communicate as well. And we want everything that we're talking about here to be congruent within the design to communicate the design's message.